welcome everyone. Today's Saturday afternoon. We've got Jim and Dave on. You two are on.
We're here.
And we have special guests, Bix Weir and Cliff High on. You two are on?
Yes.
Hey, guys.
Great. Okay, so we're going to talk about cryptos and versus gold. I guess to get started, I want to make sure all of us agree that we believe a financial crash is coming. Everybody agree?
I agree to that. I can't tell you when.
Okay. And also, we all agree that we're living in a credit-induced bubble.
My credit cards would prove that.
Everybody,
yes, I agree.
We all agree on that?
Sorry, guys, I sinned. I have to confess I sinned.
All right, so what we're going to do is we've been told, we just don't understand Bitcoin. And
correct.
Let's turn this over. I don't know which Bix or Cliff want to go first or second or whatever, but
I'd be happy to go first if Cliff.
Fire away.
You don't mind?
Yeah, go ahead.
Well, the way maybe a story about how I got here. I cut my teeth listening to Jim talk about gold and the importance of gold in a monetary system and the importance of silver. And I spent a good 8 years absolutely defending gold, defending silver as money, fighting the banksters as best I could with GATA, putting all my energies into that, literally, sacrificing a lot to do it. So it was a very difficult thing for me to get my head around this brand new thing called a cryptocurrency called Bitcoin. And I was told about it. In the first year I heard about it, I absolutely fought that with all my might, just like I fought against the banks and their unbacked fiat games and all that. To me, it was just another game that they were playing. Unfortunately, I didn't buy into Bitcoin when it was, $1 or $2. It came a little bit later, but not too much later. And what I came to understand is that Bitcoin did not represent anybody's debt, just like gold and silver don't represent anybody's debt. And that was a big change from all the other fiat things I had looked at and all the electronic assets I had looked at. There was always a promise to fulfill on the other side. And when Bitcoin came around and I read the white paper and it said it's a decentralized peer-to-peer payment system. And it was powered and managed and monitored by all the users of the system, and no central banks were in the middle of it. There was no middleman, no J.P. Morgan, no Steve Mnuchin. Nobody was in the middle of it, and it was humanity breaking free from the system of debt and the system of control that they have over us today. And it was very similar when I ultimately understood that it was extremely similar to what gold had represented to me all these years. That's when I took more interest in it, and I really dug in deep to find out, is this really secure? Is it trustworthy? Is there anything that could be hacked or cracked? Or what is the problem? Where are the problems with this system? Because it seems a little too good to be true if it is something that could take down our current banking system or even be growing up right next to it and have the ability to move over. As the old system crashes, the ability to move over to a new system, because the gold and silver solution was going to be very difficult. Reallocating gold and silver to humanity, who owns all the gold and silver? It's mainly the banksters and those people who we had trusted with our monetary system in the past. And once the current system crashes, I had this feeling in my gut that people aren't going to trust anybody anymore, but there was nowhere else to go. And that's when the cryptos came in. That's when I started listening to Cliff, who described it very well to me so I can understand that it was humanity breaking free from the bankers and giving us another option besides the gold and silver option. That's my short introduction. Cliff, what do you think about that?
I think it's extremely accurate. It's one of many different ways to look at the cryptocurrencies, because we can look at them as digital currencies, every bit is competition to Visa, MasterCard kind of digital payments, or the ACH, the automated clearinghouse, or the SWIFT system of the banks. It's actually competition to that. It's in competition to the remittance system that is based on the old telegraph wire approach. It's in competition to centralized authority at a bunch of different levels. It also represents a major shift in computer coding paradigms from the previous code for the individual device to now code for a network. And it's representing a level of collaboration that humans have never had before. It is also true that the understanding we have of gold and silver relative to the quantities and the potential to use as a currency is erroneous. That I actually side with Bix in saying that there's more gold than people understand, and even if it were fairly allocated, there's still yet not enough gold to be effective as a currency in the modern age unless you are attempting to some way figure out a digital transmission form for that gold, which gets you back to the issue of trust. Do you trust the people that say they're holding it for you? And since the system is crashing, and since we've been lied to for so long in the Western republics by the dishonest media, we now find ourselves in a situation where no one wants to trust anything. We can't afford to, because we've been lied to too frequently. And so a trustless system, or rather the ability to trust the system over the individuals, is really the next wave for our economic order, for the way that we're going to actually do business. And it was interesting that the way that the cryptocurrencies came along, that the Satoshi Nakamoto white paper for Bitcoin figured out how to do away with the double spending issue, and then it's been growing ever since. And it will continue to grow, in my opinion, until it's large enough to suck out all the wealth that's been stored in the old system. And it's really a system of computers all working together to arrive at a consensus. Rather, software running on individual computers, the miners, is working to arrive at a consensus as to what is in our distributed digital ledger. And so in that sense, it's much safer than centralized storage of your digital dollars in a bank or any other scheme we've come up with in the past 6,000 or 8,000 years. We know from history that gold and silver as money have failed repeatedly. It's still money, but as a currency system, it doesn't work much longer in any event than historically we find paper currencies working. And paper currencies had an advantage of not being heavy, more easy to hide and keep away from bandits, and easier to transmit, etc. And those are some of the aspects we need in our new world. So, in my opinion, the cryptocurrencies came along at just the right time, and now it's a question of growing the software that is cryptocurrencies into something robust and capable of serving humanity as a whole.
Absolutely articulate. I've heard a lot of people argue cryptocurrencies to me, but Bix and yourself, Cliff, I got to say, absolutely articulate.
Well, thanks much.
I learned from you, Jim.
Well, yeah, but Jimmy might be a tad of an anachronism, because I'm kind of very old-fashioned. But there's no question that gold never functioned itself as a currency. The need for currency was real, and it made currency real. Okay, and that the central banks have been looking for something new to use as a reserve currency, but it's not out there. I mean, what are you going to do? Make an average of all currencies, and that's an average of everything going down, and that's not going to serve as a reserve currency. So, I've always thought, and that's a fact, that the central banks will have a crypto that only they can trade, and and when you explain we've been lied to too much, and the effect it has, that will become more obvious once the party is over. You make more sense of cryptos, gentlemen, than I've heard up to this period of time in the fewest possible words. I think the reason people don't understand is because if you read this stuff, it's so complex, okay, that, there's a truism. If you're reading and you go over a word you don't understand, you must stop reading, and you got to look up the word. Why? Because from that point forward, you don't retain anything. Okay, that's one of Hubbard's discoveries, and even though his final product got a bad reputation, the guy was no dope. And so anytime I'm reading anything and I see a word I just don't understand, I stop reading. I don't need a dictionary. They don't exist anymore. Flip on the computer and find out what that word means. And it's amazing what it does to your intellect. It's almost like a cold shower after a nice hot sauna. It would wake you up. So, one thing that I got to say is that I want to congratulate both of you, not only for having seen this early, but really to have seen the why in it, okay? What you said to me now makes a great deal of good sense. And the only argument that's left is, what is the system worth? What is paper currency worth? And eventually, what is gold and silver worth? And you're very close to the free gold school. In fact, you are preaching free gold. The only problem with free gold is, like, when people discover things that are real in monetary, they become monetary schools. And they're Austrian, and therefore you have the Austrian school. And the free gold school is shockingly right, but it turned into a religion that loves this and hates that. But their basic tenet is you must have a currency, and currencies will always exist for the purpose of exchange. And something else will exist for the purpose of maintaining value long term. So I can see your argument, and I can see where Bitcoin, where the lack of government intervention in Bitcoin is because I think they want to see how it happens. They want you to develop the programs, etc. But these guys are not dopes. They may be snowflakes, but they're not dopes, and they know you've hit on something. So the entire discussion that I see it is, how did the market develop? Did a market develop? At what price is the development compensated? At what degree of duration does it have before that price is found? What's its application if, in fact, really the governments and those people who are running us want to steal it? Just points of discussion. But I'll tell you that up to now, I've looked at Bitcoin as being a phenomena of the strange environments we live in. I don't want to be insulting and say tulips or something like that, but let's not do that because now I know crypto isn't. But we've got to get we all need to know. Why couldn't it be 100,000 tomorrow? The answer is it could be. So
boy, I sure hope not.
No, but it could be. Okay, and we'll discuss why as we go through this. So I want to say, number one, I got no argument with you. Okay. 2, the value has to be determined. 3, it has a future. 4, its future is the currency that the school of free gold is looking for, but has yet to define. And I really think that when you take into consideration the basic understanding of the school of free gold, the only thing they didn't add to that was free gold and cryptocurrency. They said currency, but they constantly say all currencies are going in the pooper. So it's very hard to understand why anybody could look at currency as having any capacity whatsoever to maintain its value against what a crash and a credit crash could possibly create. So I want to thank you for your opening education. My argument will be, if there is any, in understanding valuation, knowing when its future has been discounted, to the point where, like everything else, at $3 it was a screaming undervaluation, and at $1 million it might be a screaming overvaluation.
Maybe.
Okay, I'm just throwing numbers out. These are not beliefs; it's just numbers.
I'll pass this over to David in a second, but I want to say that, Cliff, you mentioned that gold and silver have failed as monetary assets or monetary policy, and I know I've seen an interview where Bix, you had mentioned they can't go to a silver standard because there's not enough silver.
So what they said is they failed as a currency. Okay.
But the reason for the failure was man, not the metal itself.
Well, what I'm hearing, Bill.
Actually, let's also contribute in there. Part of the issue is the fact that it's a metal, and so consequently, you needed to store it in a big building, and sooner or later, it was stolen from you, no matter what state you happen to be in. And so China,
blockchain would prevent.
Correct.
And we agree with that. To the second point, you're absolutely right, Bix. There's not enough silver at this price. But if you had silver valued at $10,000 an ounce, there'd probably be enough silver around.
But I think the reality of what Jim was saying, and what is the value, we haven't known the value of gold and silver at least since they invented the computer trading model. I mean, if people don't understand that gold and silver are under control by now, I think most do. And I would love to know the true fair market value of gold and silver and Bitcoin and all the cryptocurrencies in today's state of creating electronic assets, so to speak, in the derivative market, in the central banks, you name it, everything has turned into a debt-based liability asset.
Well, one thing that I've been good at in my life is tops, okay, and I hope on all those points, if there's any legacy that I leave, it might be calling tops.
I agree, and you have called them. My point would be that because I've done a lot of research into the history of computer trading and computers in general, and where our electronic monetary system came from, I know that the Fed has been deeply involved in the electronic money since day one.
Oh, absolutely.
Big time, major focus. Okay? For
years.
I
mean, that's what RUTA stands for. Root A is a computer programming term. It's the basis of our financial system. So
I didn't know. I thought what you cleaned out was sewers. I thought it was Roto-Rooter.
You'd have a lot more money.
I never knew. I never knew where that name came from. Ruta.
Yeah, it comes from the Federal Reserve Bank of Boston. It's a comic book they put out.
Certainly appropriate in the present situation.
But Bix, when the markets come apart, do you not agree that as derivatives fail and are peeled back, become worthless, assets, the underlying assets are going to find or approach their real values?
Now, go easy, because this is a man who sits upon a gold mine here, okay? So we don't want to depress him.
I do in a sense, but knowing that the derivative market is the multi-trillion-dollar problem, and it is a weapon of mass financial destruction, I get to a point is thinking, okay, if the derivative market blows, everything blows. I mean, literally everything. Even banks not involved with the derivative market will go sideways because their customers will lose when the big banks go down. That is the reason the manipulation has been allowed to last for so long. They have to keep this system under control, and they had no way out. Even going back to 1913, they really did have no way out. Once they started the Fed, once they got us off the gold standard or semi off the gold standard in 33 and then got us off the gold standard in 71, the problem was always, where do we go from here? And that's the big
problem
thing now.
Today.
Yeah.
That's today's major problem. Where do we go from here?
Yeah, and that's exactly why.
Believe me, we might not like them, okay? And they might be the most evil characters. Who knows? Maybe the movie The Office, where Satan was the head of the legal firm, might be right. But where we go from here is the primary question. We've got a terrific price on Bitcoin. We've got modestly improved prices on silver and gold. And we've got prices on equities that have never been seen before in the history of trading. And currencies are sort of yawning.
But remember, when the banks go, when the derivative bubble goes, nothing will be priced in U.S. dollars because there will be no U.S. dollars. The fractional reserve system is guaranteed that the largest banks will go down if they have any big hits on the derivative side. And those banks go down, it's that too big to fail issue. Once these big banks, the
only disagreement I'd make would be on the dollar. I believe all currencies will still be there. The question is, what will they be worth? I mean, maybe you buy chewing gum for $1 trillion.
Right.
But the currency will be there. The currency will be functioning because you've got to go buy something from the local hardware store.
Right. But they'll have to restart the currency system because
so there has to
if the banks go down, there's no money.
Well, the banks, when these guys go down, but somehow, the Rothschilds are really hard to get rid of unless you put them in airplanes.
Well, that's helicopter. I think it was the helicopter.
No,
but
it was a helicopter.
Right.
Hey, by the way, did you ever hear of a helicopter running into an airplane? I'm a helicopter pilot. I could run into a lot of things. In fact, that's why I stopped flying. But I never heard of it. It's very hard to run a helicopter into an airplane. You got to really have the intention.
Cliff, did you have something to add?
Well, I was just going to say that maybe we needed to look at it a couple of different ways here, okay, get a different perspective on things. Because I think Jim is correct. I think that he's very good at picking tops. But I think that what we need to do is to look at a scenario that would give us a different perspective so that we might be able to judge how the market is actually forming and where it is in a historical sense. Because
I'm going to say now you're right. The cryptocurrency is here to stay. Okay.
Right. Well, let's look at it this way too. The derivatives, as Bix is talking about, if they were to go bluey and if the banks were to crumble down to nothing, would cause devastation throughout the social order. So let's assume for a minute that the powers that be are not going to let that happen. Let's side with Catherine Fitz with the idea of a slow burn in a sense of at least controlled retreat. And that maybe the powers that be are aware that cryptocurrencies are beyond their ability to control, but nonetheless they're forced to use them because nobody's going to accept the SDR or any form of...
The SDR is a joke.
Exactly, of any form of a joke currency again.
Totally. It's a very dark joke.
Yes, but let's assume then that all of that wealth, all that stolen extra calories produced on the backs of all these people for the last 70, 80 years is going to try and find its way into cryptocurrencies. The people that are going to be doing that are going to be doing everything they can along the way to keep the system going long enough at least for that to occur. If indeed they are doing that, then we could see a situation where we're all correct. The dollar doesn't go away, and I can actually even make a case that the dollar is going to get a lot stronger, at least in the short term. But that what actually happens is that the evolving system starts taking over. So in other words, right now I could obtain a plastic card that would allow me to spend cryptos in dollar-denominated amounts within the U.S. as though I was using a Visa card. I could do the same thing outside of the U.S. and get it in a euro denomination, or nowadays even in
or even gold denomination.
Correct.
You're actually starting a system. I think Ben Davies is starting Glint, which does the same thing with gold.
Well,
right, and so we're going to have multiple different kinds of systems all emerging at the same time that have to suck out all of those quadrillions of nominal or notional dollars into these new forms, and that's where I think we are. Correct.
Drug money is all $100 bills.
Right. Not going to do any good anymore. Right.
No, they're all. You just take a look at El Chapo's treasure rooms. Okay, yeah, there's a little gold in the corner, not much, silver in the other corner, but the piles of $100 bills are amazing.
I know.
Okay, you better it might be no smoking in the treasure room.
Right.
Well,
but
you know
the
what
point
I think
being that historically we're at a juncture.
Yeah, we are.
It's like 1789, and you're going to say, okay, here we are. France is going into turmoil. What's it going to be like, and how long is it going to take? I actually don't think the banks are going to crumble per se. I think that we're in an economic bubble, a debt-based bubble, but I think it's coming unglued and has been very rapidly for the last year, and that the valuations we're seeing are hyperinflation.
How will the
Well, you got hyperinflation right in front of your eyes, because if Bitcoin is scratching 10,000, it's telling you something.
Correct.
Okay.
And if gold and silver were freely traded, you'd see it there too.
Well, but how will the derivatives be handled?
I think that, part of this I want to get in, and I sure want to hear David, and I want to shut up, but I would like to get into the construction of the markets before we finish this, as part of the valuation question, rather than the existence question. Okay. I think all these things will exist. Gold will exist, currencies will exist, and a cryptocurrency will exist, and the Fed will try and steal it. But the question is, what are the values that are going to be attached to all of these items? Currencies, metals, cryptos, crypto reserve. And that's what I think we're looking at. And you're so right. The world has changed beyond, just the idea of the Whoopi airplane that our president flew in 19 times when Clinton was there. Okay, I mean, things have changed. It makes Caligula look like an apostle.
Yeah, like he wasn't trying.
And this is all coming. This is all coming out at the right time.
It's beyond belief. And have you noticed that pedophiles started at an age of 17 and 18? Now they got it down to 14. Hang on, you're going to find out the real age.
Yeah.
Okay, and it's going to shock you, and it's going to shock me. I mean, I plead with my children: don't let your kids out of your sight, and leashes are not a bad idea. My sister used to had two. She had a leash on them. Okay, not a bad idea.
I've seen that. Yeah.
Hold on.
When you got two, they go in two directions. They never go in the same direction. That would be too easy. They're not born for that purpose. They're born to take you, to destroy your mind. So at some point, let's talk about the markets, how the character of markets have affected these various items, and how markets may go in the future and have significant impact on the valuation part.
How are derivatives going to be handled? We can't have a slow burn with the amount of derivatives outstanding. I completely disagree with that.
Well, derivatives,
no, Jim,
I don't think they will be handled.
Jim, let them answer.
Okay.
Well, sure. I actually think that people that are on that are caught in the middle, okay, the Norwegian town that has got a derivative that is guaranteeing, they think, a certain level of income or production, I think those people that are actual derivative victims at that level will be the ones that will basically unwind the system by converting over. That is to say, by taking some of those assets and buying into cryptocurrencies as it's going along and making a net benefit on the shift of all of this money into cryptocurrencies. Because bear in mind, it's not just derivatives, but it's actually all of the real cash, all of the real wages that people are earning. A lot of these guys are now starting to shift into cryptocurrencies. And here's the thing about this. Cryptocurrencies are at their core software. And so there's a lot of people that are thinking it can be hacked and cracked and all of this. But basically the blockchains are quite immutable and can't be hacked but they can be changed as we agree that there's a bug. We can fix it and make them stronger. So, but there's also something about software. It goes through an organization at a known speed with known milestones along the way, and at a predictable rate of adoption within the size of the totality of the universe that is being looked at. And so we can make some predictions as to how fast people will move over into cryptos. And right now, even with this advanced valuation of scratching at the bottom of 10,000 for Bitcoin, we're still only looking at 300,000 people that are actually Bitcoin owners, and maybe 2 to 3 million people that are involved in cryptocurrencies as a whole. But we're getting at a point where we're going to cross a threshold, and those people will be enough to influence more than twice their number to join them in a short period of time. And if we just look at the statistics on wallet downloads, because you can get a free cryptocurrency wallet and just download it to your PC. And if you just look at the statistics on these over the last couple of years, you see that for a while we were simply doubling every year. And then we started to really accelerate on the number of aggregated cryptocurrency wallets being downloaded. And it's now starting to really reach into exponential. But this exponential is relative only to the people that are there already, not to the size of even the population of the United States. So if we imagine that we've got to get all of our population over into the cryptos, and that there will be incentives for them to do so, I think the incentive system will also hit the guys that are in the derivative bind. And I think that we're seeing some of the language now about such discussions occurring in town councils and other areas where we get this stuff out on the internet, and people are actually considering, oh, well, we've got this annuity coming in as a town or a corporation or a canton or a province or whatever. How about if we buy some Bitcoin with it? And so radical concepts are being broached at a minor level of officialdom, and I think it's signaling the way that the organic nature of this will cause the derivatives to shift over. So in that sense, I don't see a crash and a dip into a Mad Max world. I see that the software is going to eat money the way that software ate air traffic control, or any of these other things, or communications. And it's starts off gradual, accelerates, reaches the innovators, goes into early adopters, reaches into mainstream, and at that point we all look back and say, how could it have been otherwise? But we're a long way from there now, and that's where the issue of the market comes in, and the fair valuation, because I think Bix is correct. If we had to do a fair valuation right now, $1 million is too little for a Bitcoin.
Cliff, there's over a quadrillion. Go ahead, David.
Well, my question would be you're talking about, okay, there's X amount of people in Bitcoin at this particular minute, and Bitcoin, just keep it simple, is trading at $8,500. 65% of the United States population doesn't have $500 to rub together in an emergency. So are you telling me 65% of the population will never own a Bitcoin?
No.
Well, it's divisible into I think it's 100 millionth of a decimal. I mean, it's divisible such that you don't have to buy a whole Bitcoin. You can buy a penny's worth of Bitcoin if you want.
Less than a penny. Yeah.
Yeah, way less than a penny. One Satoshi is one. It's 8 decimal points, and that can be changed also. So, yeah, people talk in Bitcoin, but it is a lot more divisible than gold or silver or anything really.
And let's look at reality here too. I've got man on the street kind of stuff here, in the sense that I've got working relatives in the food service business that are putting their money into Ether and some of these other coins, which were a little bit cheaper, and trying to buy a whole ETH, so to speak, right? And so here's a guy, he's making probably just barely over minimum wage, working at a fast food restaurant, and he's mid-20s, and so he's already in the process of converting his disposable income not into gaming or good times or anything, but rather into an investment in his future by buying into the cryptos, and it's accelerating even on a daily basis. So he was talking about having $400 in Ether, and he had this a couple of days ago. Well, Ether's gone way up already, and pretty soon he will have doubled his money. A big incentive there for him to continue and also to start talking about his success. And so it's starting to spread at that level in an area that we could not have anticipated as if we were trying to plan this in a central way, because it's spreading from the fringes in, not from the center out.
Hey, Bill, one more thing on, because I know what you're saying about the derivatives, because I had talked to Cliff about this. The derivative situation, I do think that Cliff is right. It can be handled on a small basis, but the big ones, when the big ones hit, they're going to be bailed out and hidden. And I think that's exactly what happened in 2016 with the silver derivatives at Deutsche Bank and Glencore and Trafigura. I think there was a secret bailout by China to take care of a monster derivative problem that they have, and then it just kind of went away because they knew that if you can sweep these things under the rug just for so long, there's always going to be a loser. But China knew that if they pulled the plug then, it would be mass chaos. If one of these monster derivative goes off and it takes a bank down like Deutsche Bank, I do think that it would be hard to bounce the system along without doing a lot of secret bailouts. And I do think they will. I remember Hank Paulson saying, we will do everything.
There's two sides to the trade. There's a winner and there's a loser.
Exactly.
And if the loser can't pay, the winner is then a loser. This cannot be an orderly. I mean, what I'm hearing is you both believe that this can be an orderly. It can be done in an orderly fashion.
No, I just said it wouldn't be. Yeah, not orderly. It'll be chaotic as hell.
I think there'll be a lot of secret bailouts, just like Deutsche Bank was bailed out of their silver issue back in 2016.
And look, we've also had some rumors come on out that show some of the things that Bix is talking about in terms of the Chinese mindset. Okay, the recent meetings in Vietnam and the rumors that are not substantiated but are really sound in the sense that they're coming from multiple sources in multiple different languages, that some of the discussion was about a discovery of of a section of tunnels in Indonesia that are filled with the gold that was stolen from the Chinese in World War II. And so they've actually had that at the level of the heads of state. They've been discussing this sort of thing. In those discussions, some of the things coming out from the Chinese side is that, yes, it can all be managed, that they basically have a very far look on this, a very distant view of where they're headed and what needs to happen. And as Bix was saying, they're quite prepared to take the losing side as the winner, so to speak, on some of the derivatives in order to gain the goodwill and to keep the system going, because they're going to make so much more money that it's basically a loss leader.
But how do you absorb the losing side of over a quadrillion-dollar market?
Well, there's the rub. It's not real. It's not real. We can say right now it just goes away. And instantly it's a deflationary event, but we don't have to advertise that. It's really goofy. When we think about it, we've crossed a boundary, okay? The boundary in my mind...
deflationary against money.
Correct. So right now they say there's $1 quadrillion that are owed in a particular, let's just put it into a single basket, a single derivative. And the Chinese come along and they say to the people that would nominally have to pay, we know that this is the situation. We're going to go and buy this derivative from the people you have to pay to, because we know that you're incapable of paying.
But what do they buy? And
we're going to buy it. They're going to buy it with their gold-backed petro yuan or whatever they're going to offer in terms of that.
And how do they create that value? They have to mark gold up to some astronomical figure because that's what
if they've got vast quantities of it, if they've got and and especially if they're not going to transmit it or hand over any gold, but simply go to say that Sweden was due to get $1 quadrillion dollars from the U.S. Fed on a bogus derivative that the country of Sweden had purchased. China could go to Sweden and say, look, we're going to give you $1 billion worth of purchase credit from our country in exchange for that derivative. And China doesn't have to come up with a dime, because what they're doing is basically saying, we're guaranteeing you that you can buy $1 billion worth of stuff from us without ever getting a bill. And then they go to the Fed and they say, hey, in order to keep this system going, we want X, Y, Z.
So who creates that $1 billion worth of products that ships to Sweden and creates it for nothing? Somebody
that Chinese
has to
do.
pay
No.
somewhere.
Okay, well, see, here's the thing. We've crossed over to a system now, globally, where there's more wealth on the planet than we could ever imagine. It's no longer a system of scarcity because we're able to manage and we're actually getting more efficient at it.
There's more wealth, but there's far more debt than there is wealth.
Okay.
And that's a fact.
Okay, but debt is simply a notion. It is not a reality. It can be made to be material or not.
You can't tell that to a bank. You can't tell that to a creditor. It's a notion.
Well, they count. I mean, one man's debt is another man's wealth and asset in this electronic world that we live in.
So when the liability collapses, the asset side is if the liability goes away, then the asset goes away.
Right.
Correct.
And
correct.
That's the derivative. That's why they keep bailing out the big ones, because once in a fractional reserve bank, once you lose 5%, 10% of your Tier 1 capital, it's over.
And that's their big problem, is that the Tier 1 capital in the form of daily wages is being lost to the system. And so they're trying to prop it up at the back end, so to speak, with anything they need to do. And look at the United States. Our single largest asset in our country is not all the oil, not all of the gold that's hidden, not our national forests or any of these kind of actual hard physical assets at all. The single largest asset our government has is student debt. And so you're going to tell me that that's an asset? No, that is a notion that we could claim it as an asset if we could ever get it to be paid off. But it'll never be paid off.
The only real Tier 1 asset that is not a debt or not have a liability against it is gold. Worldwide.
No, that's not true. That's not true, because you can't transmit gold. You can't store it for without risk, and you can never ever know for sure that you own it unless you actually physically have it. And if you've got it, you're limited to where you could possibly sell it. So see, really, that's not true anymore. There is an asset that is not someone else's debt, and that's in the cryptocurrencies. True, it's maintained by electronics and electricity, but in this day and age, without that, the whole system crumbles anyway.
Well,
and we have to acknowledge you can't sell gold. If you physically had a big pile of gold and the derivatives bubbles blow up, a fat lot of good it's going to do you sitting with your gold in Austin if nobody in Austin is willing to give you anything other than a couple of pigs and a chicken for it.
Well, you can't tell that to the Chinese. The Chinese will buy it. The Indians will buy it. The Russians will buy it.
Turkey will buy it.
So let's do this. We were going to hand this over to you, David. We put some questions together. David's our buddy. We don't really know where he's even calling from today because he's in the Witness Protection Program. And it's not Dave Kranzler. I know everybody thought it was Dave Kranzler, but
no, definitely not.
With us every week. So go ahead, David.
Well, guys, you're all very brilliant, and that sometimes is a problem because I am really not that bright. So when I look at things, especially when I'm trying to talk to people on the street, down-to-earth people, I try to break things into the simplest form I could and ask questions because I've listened to everybody, and, one of the things we talked about was security and privacy. Well, again, I could be wrong, but from what I've looked at, cryptocurrencies, there's absolutely zero privacy. I mean, every single transaction you make is right there. It's for everybody to see. If you,
it's not attributed to you.
That's the issue.
I'm sorry, say that again?
The transaction is not attributed to you. You can see a transaction, but it is encoded with your public address. So unless you know who owns the public address, you don't know who's making that transaction.
Okay. So you're correct. There is no transactional privacy whatsoever, but that only is true at the transaction level, not at the owners of or receivers of the transaction. There you're hidden.
Well,
somebody wrote us in, and I'll use as an example. Somebody wrote us in a story, and they clearly pointed out several transactions that actually you had made, Bix, on your online accounts. So when I looked at it, I said to myself, well, if I could look at your transactions, could the IRS not look at your transactions?
The only way someone could look at my transactions, and you can, but I have multiple wallets. So I give out my public address for people who want to buy a subscription, and they can buy it in Bitcoin. So the world has my public address for that specific wallet. And, yes, you can see every transaction that has happened on that wallet. Now, I chose to tell the world that that was my wallet. Is that my only wallet? No. Could I change that wallet every single day if I wanted to? Absolutely. Would anybody know it was mine? No. Unless I choose to tell people what my public address is, which a lot of people do choose to tell people because that's how they're transacting, in the retail market. They say, here's my public address. You can send Bitcoin to it. I can use it for one transaction, or I can use it for 1,000 transactions. And
But are you saying that the IRS cannot decipher your addresses?
The IRS
if you don't tell them, they cannot.
But mind you, and all you IRS agents listening right now, I do everything by the book. So, yes, I do pay capital gains tax like everybody else does on Bitcoin transactions that are, if it's taxable, I'm going to pay a capital gain. There's no reason for me, being such a public figure, to try to hide from the IRS. And
especially if you're going to trade, you can also take off the capital losses.
Exactly. And if you screw up, and everybody who's been in Bitcoin or cryptocurrencies has somewhere along the line lost some cryptocurrency with a fat finger, you can write that off against the losses too. But another feature of the cryptocurrencies is that you can put it in a self-directed IRA and have all your tax deferred just like any other asset class. So, for tax, I am not a tax expert. I'm not giving tax advice here. But, yeah, I don't tell my people to try to hide from the IRS. There's no reason to.
Go ahead, David. Keep going.
Well, it's not necessarily hide from the IRS. It's that, we're talking the minute you go to a cryptocurrency, your whole life is an open book. You can't hide
No. You're totally hidden unless you choose to tell people. And then once you do, you can change wallets. I give out one Populous token with every one of my subscriptions. Every single one has a different public address. People see the address. Only I know who address the name matches up with. But, yeah, I can give you my address, and I have thousands of different addresses. Some people know what my address is. Some people don't.
So the government can't go in and force Coinbase and all the exchanges to provide all the data, Social Security number, and addresses.
Right. Absolutely they can. And they will. I think they have. They're trying to right now.
Well, that's my point.
What's the problem? What's the problem with it? We're not
trying to hide anything.
Right. No, my whole point is there's absolutely no privacy.
No, you see, you're wrong about it at a couple of levels, all right? You're correct that the transactions can be seen, and if Bix or I release a public address, then that public address can be tied to our names by government or anyone else. But beyond that, you have no real understanding. There's no ability to get out what they call OSINT, open source intelligence on someone. So just because you can do this does not mean that you're hackable or that you're exposed. But also there's
I didn't use the word hackable. I'm saying there is zero privacy. The minute we go to a cryptocurrency in the country or the world, that is like stamping Big Brother 666 in our forehead. And every transaction transaction on the planet will be monitored.
No, see,
and they will shut our accounts off at will.
No,
and they will
nobody
tell
can shut it off. See, nobody can shut it off. That's the point. This is actually your surety, your safety is in that fact that transaction is available and publicly able to be tracked on the blockchain information. So, for instance, I know a guy. He bought a bunch of silver. He sold his silver recently and decided to buy some cryptos. He screwed up and he lost well over 100 Litecoin. But because, and in the way in which he'd screwed up, didn't matter because the 123 Litecoin was on the blockchain, it was able to be recovered. And it's because there's consensus, because it's out there on all these different machines. So no government can shut off my account. There's no central authority that can do that because there's no center anywhere within the system. It's 100% distributed. This is also the true of exchanges. As you buy a Bitcoin on Coinbase, yeah, sure, IRS has to come, and they're going to strong-arm Coinbase, and Coinbase will ultimately comply and have to kick over all the information on its customers. But you've taken your Bitcoin off of Coinbase at that point, if you're paranoid about government knowing what you're doing, and then you've converted your Bitcoin into Ethereum or some other coin, and you're out there trading on distributed exchanges. Nobody owns those exchanges.
And you're reporting that all to the IRS, right?
You're reporting everything to the IRS as you do your business, correct? So my point is that
there's not privacy. I mean, your financial life is.
But you don't have privacy now. You've got to report all your transactions to IRS on the dollar
and gold.
Correct.
If I go to the store and buy a dozen eggs, that's pretty much a private transaction.
No, it isn't. No, it isn't.
If I hand them $3 in cash, or if I go to my local farmer and even give them a silver dime, that is a private transaction, is it not?
Okay, we'd have to get real technical here. It's private in your mind as long as you're not being video recorded anywhere by a security cam. So maybe out in a farmer's field that might be true, but in a convenience store, no. They'll have facial ID and they see you handing over the $3. And they can come back and see that up to 24 hours or 48, however long that cam stores that.
We're looking forward to central banks doing this.
Okay, but also, see, here's the thing. The central banks can do this all they want, but we don't have to play their game. This is a bunch of software guys, a bunch of geeks and nerds that have crafted this system together globally, and we're out playing, and we don't care what the central bank does. So what if they create a new crypto dollar? They cannot force you to deal in their crypto dollar, nor can they shut down.
That's why they'll only deal with it between central banks.
And they can't shut down any of the cryptos. Plus, here's something else to acknowledge. Bitcoin is an open crypto system. If you want privacy and you want to really mask everything, use one of the privacy coins. There's a bunch of them where it doesn't matter if you see that public address. It goes away as soon as the transaction is done, and so that public address just disappears. So there's a lot of ways to be private if that's your issue.
David, who was the young guy they put in jail and took, what was it, 100,000?
Yeah, it was 170,000 Bitcoins they took from Silk Road. They put Ross in jail.
Well, he was doing illegal transactions. Of course they're going to put him in jail.
But they still took his 170,000 Bitcoin.
But they didn't shut it down and didn't screw around with the network, and they didn't do anything that way. They took it because they found the wallet on his PC and carted off his PC.
Okay, so and again, I'm being the devil's advocate because I had a lot of readers write me in questions, and the first one is the amount of wallets that have been stolen already is astronomical, because most people's wallets are kept in their phones, and once you hack someone's phone and get their password, you immediately go to their cryptocurrency account and strip it. I mean,
hold on. Yeah.
That's bogus.
That's a bold statement.
If you can hack a phone, it's very difficult, okay? Most phones are not hacked. So let's be very precise about what we're saying here. That may have happened to less than 1/10 of 1/4 of 0.5% of the smartphone holders within the state of Arizona. But it is not a large number of individuals. Most phones are not hacked. And how do they know you have cryptocurrencies? Which wallets would they look for? Where would they know to go and find them?
And those wallets are encoded themselves.
Correct.
Well,
Gentlemen, may I just have one sentence? If this is argued on the technical basis, you're arguing whether or not it will continue to exist. I recommend that at some point we argue this on the valuation basis and determine what the valuations will be of what will exist, because cryptocurrencies, Cliff and Bix have made very clear, are going to be around. Now, what's their value going to be?
And that's a real hard question.
They made a case for durability that only the geeks can try and take apart. I can't take it apart.
Well, there's already been 30 million tethers stolen, 400 million Ethereum stolen.
No.
How many U.S. dollars? How much gold?
Wait a second. Wait. The 400 million in Ethereum was not stolen. Two of those occurrences were bugs in the wallet software. So that kind of stuff happens. It's correctable. Those coins will be recovered. They're not gone anywhere. They're just locked up in a wallet at the moment. Everybody knows what the solution is. They just don't want to do it because it's socially unpalatable to reverse the Ethereum network back to before it occurred and then cause the thing to redo the blockchain. But it's possible. Plus, they may be able to isolate it.
But what we're saying is it is happening, meaning it's happened in the past. But all I'm getting at is that if I'm looking for criteria with the utmost security, I would automatically say that we've already seen there's problems in cryptos. If I have gold, and whether I have it in Singapore or I have it in Brinks or I have it in Miles Franklin, I have an account that is insured, and I could pick up that phone.
And you're completely relying on a third party to be in business. And there's been more gold thefts in the world than any other type of commodity, as far as I know, isn't there?
That's correct.
Yeah, but you only have a 10-year track record, or 9-year, or whatever it is, of actually only 3 years of cryptocurrencies really having value.
Correct.
But let's concede the point. Bix. Shit has happened. Things have occurred that have been bad in software, and let's also acknowledge it's being corrected. But let's concede the point and go on and say it's going to occur in the future. I actually had a guy send me $1 million in Bitcoin accidentally, and he was freaking out because he sent me at the time it was like 580 Bitcoin because he made a decimal error in sending it to me, and it was no big deal. I just sent it back to him. So
you're a gentleman.
Yeah.
But see, here's the thing, guys. I mean, all he would have had to have said was, well, look, Cliff's a ripoff artist, etc. See, there's social controls on a lot of this stuff. The world's changing in a way that we have to acknowledge those changes. Otherwise, we're going to be arguing that, yes, in the past, gold was safe because it was too heavy for the bandits to carry off, and you could get at them and chop them up with your sword. And we don't live in those worlds anymore. If we really want to talk about the markets and what's going to happen, then we have to think about this. Okay, what is Bitcoin worth versus gold versus currency in a world of quantum computers, a huge industry in near Earth orbit space, and the opening of Antarctica to exploration and spilling of all of the secrets that are down there? Because that's the world we're entering into, and we have proof of it with the powers that be pushing Tom DeLonge and his Academy to the Stars guys out in the forefront.
Well, and again, we're all in agreement on a lot of things. But, again,
but you haven't touched valuation.
Jim's important on the valuation.
Jim, I can tackle that one. I can try to tackle it because I've tried to do the same thing for silver and try to do the same thing for gold. When you're valuing any asset, you're valuing it against other things. If I'm going to value Bitcoin, gold, cryptocurrencies against the amount of unbacked, debt-based asset classes out there, which anything electronic in my book, yeah, you are looking at $100 million Bitcoin. You are looking at, because what is going to happen and what we're seeing happen is that money is going to come out of these little hidey holes that the mass of this money is in. It's mostly hidden by the powers that be in Antigua and Panama and tucked away in Obama's $1 billion little kitty somewhere. All that is going to come out as soon as people start fearing that the U.S. dollar and all its derivatives thereof and all the other fiat money is being abused massively. It will all come out.
It's going to want to go somewhere.
Yeah, it's going to want to go to gold. It's going to want to go to silver, and it's going to want to go to this new crazy system called the cryptocurrencies that is not only a form of money, but also building an economy with businesses and tokens linked to those businesses that is growing at a massive, massive pace right now. And these companies are these were the ICOs of this past year, and they're just coming to market with some amazing products. And all this money is going to be flowing into, if gold and silver are ever cut free, which I think they will be very soon with the help of peer-to-peer cryptocurrencies. I think that's the big problem, is the markets that gold and silver are valued in are completely controlled and manipulated through computers and derivatives. If we can take out that middleman with a peer-to-peer type currency, peer-to-peer exchange, I think that would free up gold and silver to join in the party with the cryptos.
Can you address what's going to happen when they start to begin the futures, the Bitcoin futures on CME?
I can tell you what Cliff Data says, but for me, I don't see anything good coming from it, obviously. But at the same time, it's a non-deliverable product. They don't have to deliver any physical Bitcoin with these futures and options that are trading, whereas in gold and silver, you do have to, there is a delivery component.
And there will always be.
Yeah. So,
hey, Bix, let's take a second here.
May I answer a question?
Sure.
Have you ever considered for a moment that markets are made up of 4 parts? Buy, sell short, and cover. But Bitcoin and all the cryptos right now are 2-part markets. They're buy or go home. There's no short.
Well, I don't think so. I think the Chinese markets were trading derivatives the whole time. You look at their volumes, they're trading.
I think what you're looking at, and you fail to recognize, is you're looking at a long corner. I'm only talking valuation now, because I'm convinced that there will be cryptocurrencies. I'm convinced that they're very much involved with the Fed. I'm convinced the only reason that there hasn't been all kinds of regulations, you should live in the regulations I live in, you couldn't function. The fact is, I see a huge, monstrous, historic, first-time long corner. Okay?
In gold,
yeah. But there's nothing wrong with that, guys. Having called a long corner could be one of the greatest calls in all history.
I hear you, but from my work in digging into what's going on at the Federal Reserve Bank of Boston, I do think there are people within the Fed and people within the Treasury who are looking for a way out of this system, and they see building the cryptocurrencies, a crypto economy alongside the current economy for this upcoming crash that we all know is coming. I think that is why the regulation has been very lax.
I don't argue with you at all on that. But then I go back to valuation.
There's one other thing too, and I was just going to say valuation. Let's look at the Fed and all of the regulation aspect of it. They're not doing it because it would show them to be powerless. Because if they make regulations and nothing happens, then that's it. That end of game, end of story. And decentralized like this and beyond national borders, there's nothing they can do to slow it down and stop it.
I tend to agree with that position, but then I go back to valuation.
All right, let's look at valuation in a different way. Okay, let's look at valuation.
What another person will pay for any item is a definition of valuation.
Okay, but let's look at valuation.
It has nothing to do with any fundamental.
Right, but let's look at valuation not based against, in terms of payment, okay, but not based against a dollar or a currency or anything. Let's base it against time. So here we have a time penalty, if you will, associated with each and every one of the potential kinds of currency and money that we have. But we also have a time benefit. So gold, we know, stores wealth over time, and so it has a time benefit that way. But we know that it has a time loss, a negative, if you try and use it as a currency, because it's heavy. To get it from one place to another requires lots of people. You pay for labor, et cetera, et cetera. And so paper has less of a time benefit going forward because it can be destroyed, it can rot, the valuation decreases as they print more of the stuff, as the sovereign decides to inflate currencies and so on. So it doesn't hold wealth as a saving vehicle as well as gold. But it's ever so much more efficient as a currency, and it has a time.
And a currency, the valuation of currency is an exchange. evaluation of gold is in the preservation of buying power.
Correct. But see, here in cryptocurrencies,
gold
we've
is
got
not
something else.
Gold is not a currency because it's too goddamn heavy. Excuse me, it's too heavy.
Right. And we've also got another problem, and that is that we're going into space. And so we're not even going to be able to take paper or coins into space as a meaningful form of currency to deal with the transactions that are required in our transactional universe. We also have another issue, and that is that we've moved out of a thing world into an attention world. So it used to be that television in the 50s was trying to sell us all things by grabbing our attention for a few minutes. Now they're just trying to grab our attention in order to sell it to advertisers, and we're getting the things that we need as a almost an aside to that. We've become a global attention market, and so in my opinion, what I do is I value gold as having a ability to carry wealth forward in time, but I also value cryptocurrencies as a business tool now because of its incredible speed, and because
but who would argue with that?
And we don't have any of the logistics.
That's not. I personally wouldn't argue with that. I just go back to the fact that there's no functional ability to sizably short Bitcoin. And
but is that due to what's going on? Is that due to it not being mass adopted yet?
No, it will. That will happen soon. When the futures exchanges get enough guts, and they'll need it, to create a future, then you're going to have a real market in Bitcoin, because you can buy it and sell it short and cover. And what's going to happen with
gold? You mean
gold,
selling the derivative?
I'm talking about a derivative. Now, what's going to happen in gold is the physical is going to overrun the paper. So there's going to be a shift in gold to where you can either buy it or go home. And it will have the same phenomena because of that shift that you see right now in Bitcoin. And all I'm speaking about is what another person will pay for it at that time, not the existence of it, not the fact that it's a computer currency, not that it's secret or not secret, but what is it worth when it has a real market.
And that will be a function of either gold or silver not being delivered. I mean, if they're shorted 200 to 1 or 500 to 1 or whatever the number is,
yes,
that's the opposite.
That's the mechanism.
Of credit holding something up. This is credit holding something down. And
that's the mechanism where you lose two sides of the trade bill. Okay, you can't short or cover gold if the physical overruns the future and the delivery can't be made.
But you must.
So what I'm saying is the same phenomena that you're seeing right now, you'll probably see in gold and silver, but there's no way we can tell you whether, what said value will be in any of these. I mean, we can all speculate, but we haven't seen a real market in cryptos because it was set up as a long corner
market.
I think it's the opposite. I think there is a real market in cryptos, but we don't have a real market in gold and silver because of the futures and options
in cryptos.
Yeah, well, there's transition in all markets. You said that yourself, and it constantly goes on.
Yeah.
So whatever exists now, we can't argue. We can't argue it's scratching 10,000, and we can't argue that gold is trading at 1,200 and something. But right now it's 524.
Absolutely, we can.
What happens at 525?
You're talking about gold traded in derivative gold trading.
It's going to collapse.
There was a true free. Yes, I agree 100%. And that's what the gold
trading is going to collapse.
We've been waiting for that for 20 years and more. I know you've been waiting for it for a lot longer than that.
Well,
what I'm saying.
Yes.
What I'm saying is the cryptocurrencies, because there's no real strong derivative market, is more, to me, more a true market exchange than gold and silver, which trade in the 100, 200 multiples of derivatives. That's purely a derivative market. Even the LBMA that claims to trade, I think it's 25 million ounces every day net and gross 75 million ounces a day. They claim to exchange physical gold in that amount every day. That
That's
is
ridiculous.
impossible.
The global production
Exactly.
is 80 million
Of course
ounces.
it's impossible.
Exactly. That's completely ridiculous, but those are their numbers.
And
And
Bix,
that,
but
to me,
these
is a
guys
fake market.
these guys are the same people who invented Enron and gave
Yes,
you
yes.
and gave
Absolutely.
you one interest rate to set up all other interest rates against.
hey, Bix,
Absolutely.
while
But,
we're
yeah.
on the topic of gold, I've got to ask you, because I've seen it in a couple of interviews. You've said that gold has no intrinsic value and it's obsolete. You got to explain that.
I did read where you quoted me on that, and that is not exactly what I said. I said it has no intrinsic value in the high-tech world. We were talking about space, going into space, and I said there's no real intrinsic value of gold when you're in space, traveling around from planet to planet.
What's the name of the fellow who's leading the space race right now? Is it Monk or something like that?
Musk.
Elon.
The electric car guy.
Yeah,
Musk.
Elon Musk.
Okay.
Musk.
When Elon and his family go to Mars, I'll go in the same ship.
But you did say that it's obsolete.
That was the same conversation. But I don't think gold is obsolete here. Now, obviously it's not, because just look at Asia. I think in America we're getting close to obsolete, because if you look at when we went off the gold standard in '71, most of those people have already passed away. There was 2.5 billion people in 1971, and now there's 7.5. So most of those people born, anybody under 50 years old, was never on a gold standard. I watched the Mark Dice videos where he walks around with a coin of gold and a candy bar, and he just walks up to people and says, "Which would you like?" So I do think that monetary gold has kind of been drilled out of the populace, so that when we do have a choice between,
From a Western perspective.
Right.
I mean,
but yeah,
look at
obviously
what China's
in Asia,
importing, Russia's
store
importing, India imports, Turkey,
Absolutely.
Iran. I mean, it's at least 40% of the world's population.
Right. Germany's public is buying like hand over fist.
I agree. Where's all this gold
Yeah, but
coming
China. Let's stop for a second with China too. By the way, that's a national policy. And as much as they've tried to force the population or allow the population to buy gold, it still has not penetrated very much. I saw a study the other day that showed that more people are using the cell phones for payments now, and most of those individuals that are doing so are not storing wealth in gold, unlike their parents. So there's been a big generational shift in China as well, and most of the population, they were saying a majority of them, are not going to be gold buyers.
But why?
But I think the monetary leaders are buying gold. I think
correct.
I think
that's correct.
Yeah. Is buying,
yeah.
And they have that. I mean, they know what you guys know, that gold has a history as being money, and that is inbred into their mind. But the populace in general, these massive, the everyday people, do not have that mentality that gold equals money. And that would have to be trained.
Do you both agree that power has been moving from west to east, and that at some point in time, if it's not already happened, China is going to be the world leader?
China always has been the world leader.
Pardon?
China has always been the world leader. It has been the largest economy on the planet for the last 6,000 years, except for the last 100 years, when the United States was able to overtake it due to the effects of World War II. So I expect that China will indeed go back to being the world's dominant economy, but I don't know that we can say that power is moving from west to east that way. I actually look at it as power, the ability to cause very large changes in the social order, is moving from centralized to decentralized.
That's a better way to look at it, if you ask me. And good for humanity.
I mean, gold has been moving from west to east, from Western central banks, and it's been being gobbled up by the East, whether it be China, Russia, India, even in the Middle East. And historically, power follows gold. It follows money.
Well, we have to separate that, though.
They're saying that gold is money.
Gold is money, but it's an obsolete or depreciated form of money, and that's our problem in our discussion today. excuse me, if we're looking at the world going forward, we're all correct. Even military power has been shifting from west to east. But basically, no, the last 100 years of the United States as being the dominant global power, our currency has been maintained more by threat of arms than by any ability to pay out gold, because Nixon shut that window. So for at least half of the lifetime of the dollar, it's been maintained by threats rather than promises. And so under the circumstances, was gold a participant in propping up the dollar? I think not. Even because we don't know if there's any gold at all in Fort Knox. But yeah, we're correct in assuming that the Chinese still have an attachment to the metal at a officialdom level that is powering their ability or their desire to accumulate it. And indeed, they may bring out gold-backed nominally, because it won't be convertible, forms of the yuan. And other currencies. And they may even use gold to trade for oil and other materials. But even the Chinese, at an officialdom level, recognize that the new world is here now, and it is distributed in digital, and that's why they went to such great lengths to gather in, corral all of the cryptocurrency activity before this latest Congress that they went through. And that's why they've been just so quiet about the decisions that were made in that Congress that basically confirmed Xi Jinping as the closest thing to an emperor that we have in our current planet. And they gave him so much power, and the steering committee over the new China, and they did it through giving them power over the telcos and the automated payment systems that are running over the phones. And even those are so distributed. I'm sorry?
I would say he's second most powerful. I think Putin's got Russia wrapped up more than Xi Jinping has China wrapped up.
Yeah, but China's so much larger.
Yes.
But, you go to China these days. Look, I've got a friend of mine in the coast out here. His wife is Chinese, mainland Chinese. And so he goes back there. And he's been there 6 or 7 times. He doesn't have to speak Chinese. He can navigate all around, but he can't pay for dinner because it's on the phones, and he doesn't have a Chinese phone system. You can't buy anything unless you've got a phone, because no one deals in cash. He went to a restaurant with a friend of his that he'd met, just coincidentally, somebody from the state here who also happened to be traveling, 2 old guys, they're in their 40s or 50s, and neither one of them had a Chinese phone, but they went to a restaurant and basically gave the waitress the money, and she used her phone to pay for their meal. And it's that, and she was a little bit miffed about it, but they gave her a good tip. But so the world has changed over there. And he said that his friend was telling him that he'd been to China 2 or 3 times and had flown back to whatever the big airport is, LaGuardia in New York, and flown back to this airport there. And he said when he stepped out of the plane in the U.S., he said he expected to see chickens in the airport. We're so backward here. And that he flies to a regional, provincial little town in China, and then they've got an airport far grander than anything you're going to see here in the U.S. And he says you really know what power is when you see the level of the infrastructure and what the Chinese people are, how they're living, as opposed to how we're living here in the U.S. And so to a certain extent, if that's the way in which it's going to go, well, we're right where Japan and Germany were at the end of World War II. Our infrastructure is destroyed. Our populace is beaten down mentally and dumbed down now. We're sort of disheartened and in not good shape. But now is the time we get started in the rebuilding. And I personally think that the cryptos are going to be our current form of a Marshall Plan, so to speak.
Well, we can see by the ownership in Bitcoin, you don't have, well, first off, 3% of the owners of Bitcoin own 97% of Bitcoin. Would you agree to that?
I think it's something close to that.
I would say that's in wallets, though. That's as judged by wallets. Like, I have thousands of different wallets, so I would count as a lot of people.
In other words, you don't know what's in the wallet.
The top 3% own 97% of the Bitcoin, more or less. The largest owner that I've seen is, I think it's 119,000 Bitcoin. And my guess is that's got to be it's got to be the U.S. because they stole the 170,000 Bitcoin from the Silk Road guy.
Where are you getting your
they
numbers?
auctioned. Yeah, where are you getting tons of? Satoshi owns, I think, 1 million Bitcoin.
Yeah. He'll be. If you go and look at blockchain.info. See, here's the thing, guys. I mean, this is all. We don't have to really argue about this. I'll write a script, and we can actually sweep through blockchain.info and determine.
Yeah, I'd like to see that.
And we'll show a pyramid here. But Satoshi Nakamoto owns the most Bitcoins. I think he owns like 10% of all of them that are out there.
And who is Satoshi Nakamoto?
We don't know. He's the anonymous, pseudo-anonymous person that invented or at least wrote the white paper. He may be a front for the NSA. It basically does not matter.
Question.
Okay, and so it doesn't matter because it's an open source system. If he was a front for the NSA, we're not running any code that could possibly have a backdoor in it because it's all open source. Anybody can go and look at the code for Bitcoin, and in fact, you could write your own Bitcoin mining software in any number of languages and start running it today. So it's not like it's hidden in any way or obscured or there's backdoors in the system. However, somebody came up with some really good thinking, whether it was an individual named Satoshi or some other individual or was a group. It's hard to say, but we know that those Bitcoins have never moved. And that those Bitcoins existed because he was the initial miner. He set up the initial Bitcoin network with a few other individuals, and they were the ones that mined these, what were known as the Genesis block, the very first block of transactions, and it set the whole system in motion. And it may be that we never ever find out. It may be that they're, as Bix says, that they're actually owned by the government of the U.S., and they'll be distributed to the citizens of the U.S. if we ever get the government back. But in my mind, it doesn't matter because Bitcoin is such now, even close to 60% of the total cryptocurrency universe, it is depreciating by the day as a meaningful force within the larger expanding cryptocurrency world. So very soon it'll just be kind of moot when Bitcoin is.
If there's a holder, Satoshi Nakamoto, whoever it is, whether it's the CIA, NSA, a guy, a group of guys, if they own 1 million Bitcoin, they then have the ability to sell 1 million Bitcoin.
No, they don't.
So they don't?
No.
Yeah.
Well, because it's very difficult to sell Bitcoin. You can broker deals. I do know that large Bitcoin deals are going on occasionally, but yes, they could technically sell, but it would be very difficult. It would be easily visible. Everybody would see it as it hit exchanges. None of the exchanges could handle the volume, and it would create such a feeding frenzy for them that it would probably end up driving the price up.
Driving the price up?
Oh, sure. Look, it has very little to do with, as we note, valuation is entirely subjective. Gold has no value. It has an inherent cost. Okay, it has a cost to get out of the ground. Gold just sitting there with a bunch of squirrels around it, a turtle and maybe a goat, it has no value whatsoever. It's only when a human comes along and says, oh, I value that money, and that's his subjective opinion, that he values this as money.
Well,
that's when value comes in.
I'm going to disagree with this. You're telling me that if there was a million Bitcoin sold, that the price would go up. I'm saying the price would go into the dollars. You're saying it's illiquid. If I can't sell...
No, I'm talking about it at a practical, technical level. I'm not saying it's illiquid. I'm saying that at a technical level, if I had 1 million Bitcoins, it would be very difficult for me to sell them such that, and who would want to convert it to fiat anyway, but it would be very difficult to sell them in any surreptitious manner or to sell them to influence the price at all. Like if you go right now and you were to dump 1 million Bitcoin into an exchange and offer them for sale, first off, I don't think it would be believed. I actually think people would say, oh, there's a glitch.
Because it's coming from an authenticated wallet.
Oh,
right?
That would take a while. That would take a while for it to actually turn out that it was. No. I mean, yes, the blockchain would understand it. It would be legit, but it would take a while for people themselves to react to it with belief and attempt to start trying to buy some of it.
Well,
plus, you couldn't sell it as a lump.
If I was smart, I would create a cryptocurrency. Let everybody get on board. I created it, so I have 1 million, and the most they can mine is 10 million or 20 million. And
And why would you want to dump it and crush the
5 years
price?
from now, I turn around, I dump it, and I get
But why?
XYZ fiat currency, and I turn it into my money of choice, either gold or silver.
Okay.
Well,
And I've left them holding the bag.
No.
I would argue that if you read the Satoshi white paper, it's not just computer programs and a protocol. It's a philosophical understanding of what he's trying to do. And would Satoshi Nakamoto, whoever that is, if it's a group, if it's who I think it is, part of that group I think is Alan Greenspan, but whoever it is, would they do something like that? And then would it be long-lasting?
I don't know.
See,
You're asking me,
I think
the average person, a good person today.
I don't think it would be long-lasting at all, because I think we have hit this technological innovation that is bigger than when Jobs was creating the Apple II personal computer back in 1977. The concept of the blockchain, the concept
of created code.
No,
right?
it's not.
Exactly.
No, it's not. No, wait, Bix. Here's no. The blockchain is, the miners run code. The blockchain is a distributed ledger. Okay, so the blockchain is a chain of documents that contain encrypted transactions. So it's not code per se. It's a giant public, validated and trustful distributed ledger of what's going on. But I agree with Bix. It would not matter if you tried to sell 1 million Bitcoin even today, simply because we've achieved network effect. Bitcoin is now larger than its inventor in a substantial way because of all of the rest of us. They're going to keep it going no matter what happens relative to its price or currency. And bear in mind that I used to say quite factually, and I think Bix has probably heard me say it, that you're not a Bitcoiner until you've gone through a couple of crashes. And I'm talking crashing from 1,000 down to 40, or from 40 down to 2.
We've gone through nothing but a credit increase since Bitcoin was created. I mean, Bitcoin's not gone through any type of markets where the system was unraveling. I mean, you have to ask yourself, what's going to happen.
Are you thinking that if there is an economic crash, you thinking people will sell their Bitcoin for some reason? Or will they be attracted to Bitcoin because it's out of the system?
I believe we're going to find out.
Well, I would argue that they would be attracted to Bitcoin because most of the people who understand Bitcoin and are Bitcoiners are not invested in the stock market and the bond market and don't have leveraged positions
and have never really seen a credit contraction or derivatives unwind.
But they've seen a 90% crash in their chosen currency. I mean, Bitcoin crashed from $1,200 down under $100, and Bitcoiners have this thing. Yeah, Bitcoiners have this saying called HODL. It's hold on for dear life, and because it is volatile, and the longer you're in it.
In my mind, that disqualifies it as a currency. It disqualifies it as a money.
It doesn't. Why?
Why? Yeah,
Why?
Stability has never been part of a currency.
Because if I'm a business owner and I accept a Bitcoin, I'm selling cars, and I accept Bitcoin equal to $30,000, and I wake up tomorrow morning and it's $10,000, what just happened?
Does it matter if you don't have to do anything with it, with the Bitcoin that day?
You sold it for Bitcoin, and
what
you
if
still
it
have a
doesn't come back within 3 months or 6 months or a year?
Then
if you're worried about that,
I'm out of business. I'm a business guy. I'm running out of 5% or 10% margin.
There are businesses that accept Bitcoin as payment and instantly convert it into whatever currency they want, the bond, the dollar, because they don't have faith in the holding it, but they do have faith knowing that a lot of people are making a lot of money and have a lot of money to spend in the cryptocurrency. So they want to attach themselves to that, but they don't believe necessarily, or they don't want to participate in the volatility. So they just sell it right away and bank that money, and next time it happens, they do the same.
Because they don't have the faith to hold it because they're afraid of what happens tomorrow morning.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but there's other people who do have the faith.
And
we're just starting. We're just new in this anyway. This is
Let's
just
go back
new.
to this white paper. What if, and this is a what if the Satoshi account does liquidate 1 million Bitcoin, and he writes a black paper, and he says, I created it. I'm rich. Have fun with.
I
don't think anybody has faith in.
And he calls it digital air. What if he calls it digital air?
It doesn't matter.
Does that shake your confidence?
No. Who cares about Satoshi or the people behind it? You read the white paper, you know what's going on. As a techie, you don't give a rat's ass about Satoshi. We're not worshiping his mental acumen or ability. What is really cool is the output. And you can, as a techie, you can go and read the code. So we have 100% faith in that sense in our own abilities to do the software, make it work, and we see it produce the outcome that it's supposed to provide. So this is not something that it... Yeah, go ahead.
One sentence. You guys are arguing past each other, and in fact, what you're arguing, each is correct, but you're missing valuation, which in time, Bitcoin will find itself in a condition where it can deliver a true what another person will pay for it, and you've clearly admitted it's a long corner.
Okay.
What I'm saying is, it can do anything it wants tomorrow, but how do I know it's not worth $10?
Just a couple of other nuts and bolts questions. Yeah. One, I'm understanding that it costs roughly $20 per transaction to do. Is that correct?
You mean in terms of the transaction fees on a Bitcoin?
Yes.
For Bitcoin or for the other cryptocurrencies?
I guess
I can do it for pennies on the dollar. I can do it for almost nothing. I use Litecoin. It depends what kind of security you want, I think, and that's the differentiation that's going on between the cryptocurrencies now. There's Bitcoin Cash, which is a larger block, and it's cheaper and faster. And then there's Bitcoin, the traditional SegWit Bitcoin, that it takes longer and is more expensive, but is safer.
Well, it doesn't have to be more expensive, Bix. Okay, when you send stuff on Bitcoin, it's the transaction fee is basically an incentive against time. So if you put a thing saying you're willing to pay a high transaction fee, your transaction will be processed ahead of somebody else's transaction where they don't care about time and they're not willing to pay that fee. But at some point, their transaction would be processed as well.
Okay.
But those
you learn something every day in the
costs
crypto.
Are a lot higher than it costs to transact Visa or MasterCard or anything like that, right?
No, that's not true. You pay 2.5% minimum on your end every time you do a Visa transaction or a MasterCard, paying into the fund against fraud. And then the merchant is paying up to 5 or 7% into that same fund, basically. So the transaction costs spread out over the actual number of transactions.
$2 on a meal. Let's say I go to a restaurant and I buy.
Yeah, but most transactions are not going to be at that level. They're going to be in multiple dollars, and the percentage is going to scale up very rapidly, especially this time of the year where you're going to spend $100, $200 on your card with every transaction.
But in order for Bitcoin to be used as a currency at your local stores, you're not going to go into your local store and always be spending $1,000 or $2,000 or $5,000.
No, you'd use Litecoin.
Yeah. It's a lot cheaper, a lot faster. Yeah, if you want to spend send $20 million to China, use Bitcoin. It's going to cost you $20 or $10, and it'll happen instantly. It doesn't matter how much that transaction is. It is far superior than what we have right now.
But if you want to send $15 over there to buy a little tiny bit of stuff, then you'd use Litecoin because the transaction costs are much lower.
And another question we got was regarding the power use. The usage of power for the mining, the uses of power for the transacting. I've seen where within, 5 or 10 years, if these things really do take off, they'll basically gobble up power output.
Well, I would. My personal take on the power situation is, one is the cost-benefit analysis. Do I think the cryptos will save humanity? Absolutely. So I don't mind paying the extra cost. But I also know that there's new costs. There's new energy technology coming down the line that will make the cost much cheaper.
You went away, Bix. You got to.
Yeah, Bix, I lost
you. Into the phone.
All right. Can you hear me? I don't know when I cut out, but
you're perfect now.
Okay. The new technologies as far as power generation, and it's going to be cheaper and cheaper to run the miners and things like that over time. I think there's been a lot held back from us. But as a cost benefit, what would I pay for energy to take out this banking cabal and what I call the bad guys? I'd pay as much as I could.
And there's other ways to look at it too. I mean, I know individuals that are doing mining, and one guy I know lives up in cold country in Michigan, and he took the computer graphic cards that are the core of his miner, and he stuck it in the furnace and put fans behind it and used that to heat his house, and he made $100,000 mining appropriate coins over the same course of that winter. So he had his house heated by the excess energy of the miner and made coin in the process. And then the other aspect of that is that we've got devices that are coming online now that are going to go into the Internet of Things. The Internet has to continue. We've got to keep going with it. It's not a technology that we can abandon at this stage. And you've got a bunch of people out there constantly tweaking on it, like myself, that are trying to make it do different things just because we can. And so someone's come up with an idea to merge a device with your power meter. And if you're one of those people that has solar panels and you're selling power back to the grid, this will meter it and get you money for it. But also on the other side, these devices will be very efficient, and they're going to cut out a lot of the waste that exists within our power distribution system in our country and in other countries. And so we're going to save more in the efficiencies we'll gain in transmission of power than the cost of the mining of the cryptocurrencies involved. And also, a lot of these Internet of Things devices are going to be devices that will be paying for their activity on the net as they go along. So you'll charge up your energy device, and it'll provide you with power for the next month. The way that creates, and so it actually buys electricity off the line from the providers and pays for it with a cryptocurrency. And the way that an efficiency is created is that the power company no longer has to bill you in arrears for stuff that you used last month and hope you'll pay them in time for that currency to have appropriate purchasing power to get them supplies to make electricity for the next month. There's a huge level of inefficiency in a lot of these centralized systems that is simply being disintermediated right out of the box with the combination of the Internet, these new devices we're building, and the cryptocurrencies. And also going to the valuation issue, these devices are going to be huge users of silver because silver is highly conductive and has special properties. They'll be we'll use lots and lots of silver in putting all these devices in everybody's house, the way that they used to have like gas meters in old London. But so it'll also hit that level of valuation as we go forward.
Well, Cliff, that works in Idaho, but I live in Texas. So if I'm mining, is it going to cost me $100,000 extra in air conditioning to keep my building cool?
Probably, but that would be a business decision for you to make. That's why people are thinking about mining in Iceland, and that's why they're mining in Finland. And even up here in Washington, they're setting up some mines relative to cheap hydro and trying to get cooling effect by local environment. But I think it's better to use that excess heat to do other things with it.
You know, we should have had a tree hugger on with us. They start screaming global warming. And going back to that, if this estimate is real, within 5 or 10 years, it's going to crypto mining is going to gobble up all the electricity. How am I going to use my toaster in the morning?
Well, you'll just toast your bread over your crypto mine. No, I don't think the estimate is real. I've read stuff that said that we'll be using as much energy as in Ecuador, and that's like, that's bogus. I've done an energy analysis on PCs and stuff for large organizations, and the question even in those was very practical. Do we tell all the employees to turn their PCs off at night, or do we tell them to leave them on, which is best for the organization over the course of a year. And so we had to go through and figure out how much energy was being used by all the devices. Everything attached to the network was sampled. We had to calculate it in amps and bring it all down to some level of understanding of what we could gain on this. And then we had to plot that against repairs and costs and replacements and so on, because for instance in PCs and a lot of these devices, it's the act of turning them on that's the weak point. It's the on and off switch. And so when we did all of this, we came to the conclusion that it was more cost effective to just turn them on and leave them on than to ever shut them off if we didn't have to, and that the amount of energy that was being sucked up by these devices when they were going into sleep mode was minimal relative to the benefit that was coming out of them, because they would all sit there and provide ambient heat for the public buildings, and it actually cut down on having to use cruder forms of heat like diesel fuel to heat these very big buildings. And so the cost-benefit analysis is where it comes down to it. And I doubt the society would allow us to get to the point where the cost-benefit would shade the other way. And the machines are getting much more efficient as we go along, even though the hashing is getting harder.
Bill, if I could just interrupt for a second. I believe the number exactly that you were talking about is presently Bitcoin uses enough electricity to power Ireland or Nigeria. I believe I read that just today, as a matter of fact. I believe that article was on Zero Hedge. But in any case, it is an astronomical power use. There's no question about it. The transaction speed is incredibly slow still. It's not like we're going to start running 1 million transactions a day anytime soon through Bitcoin. And then, again, the other thing that we keep missing here, because we keep talking cryptos, at present there's 2,500 cryptos, 2,000, 1,300, whatever the number is. How do we know which, if any of these cryptos are actually going to be worth anything 10 years from now? How do we know the SDR? We don't know. There is no track record. There is no 5,000 years ago Bitcoin traded at.
I think that's a big difference though, between understanding, and I've been on both sides of this fence, understanding the reasons to invest in gold and silver versus understanding the reasons to invest in cryptocurrencies. Cryptocurrencies is a brand new technology. The crypto companies, there's companies involved with tokens. It's not just currencies. Everything's not vying to be a U.S. dollar or a yuan or anything like that. There's a lot of different differentiations between, and there's platforms, like Ethereum is a platform. I wouldn't call it a cryptocurrency, and a lot of tokens. So yes, there are a lot, but it's all about homework. You got to do your homework, just like in the 90s with the .coms. You could pick your Googles and your Facebooks and your Amazons, but you can also get your pets.com and that type of stuff. But those who did their homework, made the right investment choices, did very well. And that's exactly what's going on right in here, except it's much bigger. This is replacing the entire economy. It's replacing the monetary system. This is a gigantic technological innovation. And that's how big it is. It's not just Bitcoin. It is a monster. And I keep trying to show people that it's not like, 1990 with the invention of the World Wide Web. Yes, that was huge. This is much, much bigger, in my opinion.
Hey, Bix, I know you two were expecting this question. In my opinion, and in others' opinion, from a mathematical standpoint, I believe the whole financial system is going to come down. I mean, I'm certain the financial system will come down, which affects credit, which affects distribution. My question is, in a society that's broken down, for all intents and purposes, whether it be financial or even an EMP or whatever, and we are living in a Mad Max world. Talk about that. Whether you believe it's going to happen or not.
I used to think that was our only choice, was the only way to get rid of the unbacked fiat monetary system and all the hidden nooks and crannies of money. I used to think we got to take it all down. And I think that was Greenspan's plan all along, was to allow people to create as many derivatives as they want, give the banks enough rope to hang themselves and destroy the system. That's why he printed so much money. I have changed my opinion. With the invention of the cryptos, I think that an economy is being built right next door to our dying economy, and they're going to be propping it up for a long time. That it gets back to your derivative question. I do think they'll try to prop it up and prop it up and prop it up. The market rigging will continue and continue and continue as something else. We need something else that's viable that we can move to, because it would be worse than a Mad Max world if the system fell apart. There'd be no power. There'd be no water. There'd be no food. There'd be no communications, because we're on just-in-time.
Food grows. There are cows. There are.
I understand,
food
but
grows.
I live in a big city, and I'll guarantee you the chaos in the streets when nobody knows what's happening. Everybody loses everything. The anger at the banks, they'll be attacking the banks and attacking the police, and police will go to help their family. I've run through all the scenarios.
Sounds like today in L.A.
Well, I think it can be. I think that's what they're trying to stop. And the crypto attempt to build something right next door to our current system and have a transition that's at least a little more smooth is what they're attempting. I'm not so sure it can be done because of the criminality, because of the corruptness of our government and our bankers especially, and those who have been ruling our lives for so long. It might be a situation where we have to pull a Band-Aid. But then we'll be sitting there and say, okay, what in the world do we do next? And
I'll tell you what we do next. Okay? We talk about Christopher Walken's Lion story. All right? Because that's where we're at these days, if we're talking about the Mad Max kind of a world. Because you've got the lion out there, and he's sitting around, and he's an old lion, and the sun's beating down on him, and it's hot on the plain there, and some of the lion cubs come running around, and they play around on him, and they pull on his hair and tug on his ears, and he just lies there. It's hot. Exactly. And he's just lying there, and it's hot and stuff, right? And he's doesn't move. And pretty soon you see the hyenas come on up, and they're getting braver and braver, and they get closer and closer, and you got a cheetah and this kind of thing, and they get closer because the old lion, he's just sitting there, and the pride's just kind of looking at him, and he just sits there and he just waits. And that's where we're at right now, in terms of, in my understanding, that we've got some people that are old lions, and they know what's going to happen, they know what needs to happen, and they know that we've got one shot to make a transition from a Mad Max world to what I personally call George Jetson world or sci-fi world, where we get into space, where we can keep the population, where we come up with a system that allows us all to continue to live together and to prosper and get over some of the corruption and all of this. But getting back to the lion story, he's sitting there, and the hyenas are getting closer, and the day is wearing on, and it's late in the afternoon, and then one hyena comes on up, and he gets a little too close. And that's just the end of it right there, right? And the lion gets up, the hyena is killed, and then the lion goes out and he just starts killing, and he kills all the other hyenas, and he tracks down the cheetah, and he kills the cheetah, and he goes on and he kills the water buffalo just because it was standing close to the cheetah in support. And it is just one of these things where it needs to occur, that there has to be a purge. And humanity goes through this, and we see it in other societies, and we're about to go through it in ours. We saw it the last time. The closest thing we had was the collapse of the Soviet Union, which was a currency issue. We outspent them. We destroyed the money. But the society still exists. Most of the people are still alive. Most of the organization is still going. And they went through their lion phase, where the corruption and everything tried to keep it going. They had the White Revolution. They stuck in Yeltsin and all of these others. And eventually it got to the point where a short judo-practicing lion had to emerge. And that was the end of the oligarchs. That was the end of the Zionist approach to try and take over Russia. That was the end of a lot of people. A lot of individuals died. And we're in that phase now, where the corruption has run its course. We have paid for it all of our lives. And the old people, the guys that just don't give it anymore, they just don't care because they're so old, so close to checking out, that what they're going to do is they're just going to get up and they're just going to start a killing frenzy. And that's what everybody's really waiting for. We see now that, for instance, the George Soros and the attempt of these guys to maintain the culture war has failed. and that the Antifa, the revolution, the Bolsheviks of this new age, they've failed. We can't have a Bolshevik revolution here. What Soros and the others failed to understand was that the Bolsheviks stole a revolution that arose organically, and they kept the power because they stole it, and they were good at screwing people over mentally and in mind control. We don't have those conditions here. We don't have an organic revolution.
With a failed financial system, you're going to have food shortages, and I've said all along, we're always 72 hours away from complete
chaos.
Can I tell you my thoughts? We're 2 hours into this.
Can you comment on derivatives, Jim?
I will, but we're 2 hours into this, and I believe now I understand the basic theory behind the cryptocurrency, and I understand where everybody is coming from, and and I believe I know where this is going, but that's a big statement, and I think we all haven't looked at that, but it will develop. In other words, the market, and there is markets, will mature to a point where the market for cryptos is an efficient and proper means of valuation, that which another person will pay. So I think we're talking past each other, but I want to tell you that I'm absolutely convinced that as the history books are written, Cliff, you are Nostradamus. Okay? No, really, you are. You think in the future. You
kind of look like him too, Cliff.
Yeah, you see in your mind the future. Whether that's 1 year or a lot more years is different, but anybody who fails to pay attention to you is stupid. I've just met Bix. I know that I'm very involved in markets and have been for 56 years, and I know Bill and David as friends, and I understand their analysis 100%. We're all saying the same thing. Let the markets decide what the answer is price-wise.
Mm-hmm. I agree on that one.
Yeah, same here. Yeah.
Okay, and if I could just, again, because I still get hung up on the actual transaction part, and since hopefully you guys are the experts, you could help me on it. Because as I'm looking at just a specific example, it's a small business, and let's say, $1 million a year business. I don't see how I could ever use Bitcoin because it opens my ledger to the general public. They get to see everything about my business, whether I own a coffee shop, a Subway, sporting goods store, no matter how you cut it, at the end of the day, my competitors, my employees, everybody's going to be looking at my earnings. And they're going to be like, well, you make too much money. Let's use the NFL as an example. We still have no clue how much money the NFL makes. We know they're going to pay Roger Goodell 30, 40 million, whatever number they want to make up. If the NFL's books ever had to be open so that us or the public or the players could see how much money the owners are really making and how little
they're pissed off.
Yeah, but but you've got a slightly skewed version in mentally of what happens with a Bitcoin wallet.
Let's take a Nate.
So let's take a specific case here. If you're a coffee shop owner, you don't give out a public address for your wallet as a whole. You just create a public address for each and every one of the products you sell. And so then any employee or anybody could theoretically, if they wanted to spend the hours necessary to either write a program or to go on out and look manually on blockchain.info, assuming we were using Bitcoin, could indeed see how many of a particular item you had sold for that particular currency. But you would theoretically also have an address for that same product for Litecoin, for Ethereum, for all of these other coins.
But a computer could easily do that, right, Cliff?
If a computer could do that if the software were written to go on out and analyze all of this stuff.
And if
correct.
I do business with you, even though your wallet is it's under XYZ, it's not under Cliff High, but if I do business with you, now I know what your wallet is, right?
No, but you know an address, that's all. And a wallet could have million addresses.
All right, never mind the wallet. I misspoke. I know your address, so I can track it that way, right?
You know, one
you
of
can
the
see
potential
payment.
millions of addresses. Correct.
Right. And you can actually create a brand new address for every single item down to a piece of gum that you sell. So,
but
what
is that? Go ahead. I'm sorry.
What was that?
No, go ahead.
Your name in your company is not tied to that address at all on blockchain. Only the person that bought that item from you knows what address they sent the money to, the Bitcoin to. And if you wanted that kind of secrecy or whatever, you could easily create a different address for each and every transaction that you do in the whole store, and none of them have your name on it, but each and every person who bought something from you would have the code, the address that they sent the money to.
Would that not?
But
be
you're the only one with the
nightmare?
Private key. What was that?
For you? Would that not be an accounting nightmare for you?
No,
well, it would be, but there's no reason. There's no reason to track, what Joe's Coffee Shop, how many pieces of gum they sold.
I'm a nosy guy. I want to my guy down the street sells.
Okay, but see, you can find that out now, though. I can actually go and I can tell you, on an independent coffee shop, how much coffee they're going to go through just using what's known as open source intelligence, OSINT. I can write a computer program that would check their relationship to any number of things based on their IP address, and I could determine that same amount of information with just as much ease as I could if I tried to track their cryptocurrencies. And if you have multiple cryptocurrencies, there's ways around it. If you wanted to ensure absolute privacy that way, there's coins that you can accept that do that. And there's also other ways of having address swaps, if you will. So you simply have a public address, and it is sent to that address, but it shows up on the blockchain info attached to another address in another one of your wallets. So it's not that difficult to do if that's your goal, to be 100% anonymous with stuff. And if I wanted to snoop on your activities, you can actually go onto YouTube right now, and you can put in the hunt for a phrase, spying on your friends with Python and OSINT. And it's a 2-hour YouTube video that will tell you how to write computer programs to go on out and find out anything you want to know about your friends. And so that kind of stuff is something we have to live with. Well, then you're safe.
Then I count you guys as friends, but
Yeah. We're not going to spy on you. We don't get that. We don't care that much.
You guys don't do that, so I'm safe. And that's a good reason not to have friends. Okay. I like that.
Yeah. But you see my point, that it's a fear, yeah.
I see every
yes.
point. I see every point made today. I see the point of the future. I see the point of the need for and the function of a cryptocurrency. I see the point of valuation, and I see the point of a collapse both in currencies and in debt. And I think we're running around the exact same thing that the market will determine for us in a very relatively short period of time. I'd say within a year and a half we'll know.
Cliff, what does your data say on your alternate?
Well, pick a time. We're going to go 13.8 for Bitcoin in the end of February, and that no longer seems outrageous to people. And so it'll be even less outrageous when I say that the data is showing that somewhere between 20 and 40,000 by August. And so,
What about gold and silver breaking free of manipulation?
We're going to have that breakdown in terms of the silver coming into the industrial component of it that's showing up in the data, and that's going to be, again, concurrent with the big flush that comes in March in the cryptocurrencies. It'll just be one of many cryptocurrencies, and the data shows that transit currency, or that conveyance currency that gets it from the mine to the manufacturer, is going to be the breaking point for price discovery for silver. But it's not going to be that day. It'll have to probably prove itself over a course of a couple of months, and it'll simply erode the criminal aspect of it. But that's also going to be taking a beating by their failure with their cryptocurrency futures. That just isn't going to go the way they think it's going to go.
I'm telling you, we're arguing the free gold. The free gold school, if they were listening to us, would be clapping and yelling. We're right.
In a week, right.
We're right. Except it became a religion and got wrong.
Yeah. Do they go live in a week, you say?
I think they go live, if I'm not mistaken, December 2nd or first part.
I heard early December, yeah.
Yeah. Well, that'll be cool to watch.
We don't have much time to...
Well, if you need any questions about this stuff answered, just ask me because I'm an expert now.
There you go. That's what we need.
Well, my data shows that there's going to be a big emotional pop relative to currency, gold, and money on the 5th of December. And then I've got echoes of that show up in May and also echoes further out into August of next year. And so
I tell you, we're all on the same side.
Maybe
the markets will decide what the value will be.
Ooh, boy, that would be something, Bill.
Well,
because those will actually bring the value back to the dollar.
That would bring value back to the dollar?
Yeah, look, I mean, if because of that, the thing that all right, I've lived outside the country as a kid, so I observed the society from that viewpoint. The thing that gave the American dollar value in other people's minds in the 60s was not our military and not our gold in Fort Knox. It was the perception that we were a clean society, that the level of corruption didn't exist the way it did locally, and so you could trust the dollar. Now that's no longer the case. But once we start heading back that way...
Well, I had this discussion with Sean, and Sean from SGT, and he said the same thing. He thinks that a purge, the outing of pedophiles, the outing of famous people, politicians, etc., would strengthen the dollar. And I disagree with that because of credit. When the world truly finds out how corrupt, how fraudulent, how evil this country has been, I think the dollar will be dumped, not bought.
Well, and to that, Bill, let's just say credit is a whore. If you go back to biblical times, credit is a whore, and you can't make a whore back into a virgin.
And by the way, every 58 years they did, according to the Old Testament, because all credit was canceled.
Well,
and it cycle.
All
credit was canceled at the end of the
cycle.
That
so actually, when you're 57, you borrow as much as you can.
Well,
and buy Bitcoin.
Right.
Oh no, I'm listening to the Bible.
Basically, can you make America great again? Is what we're asking, and we're so corrupt.
There's no way on earth. We got a president who is a real estate guy from Queens. Come on,
David, finish that.
Well, if we're so corrupt. And again, let's just take this all the way to the extreme. Are we witnessing a battle between good and evil, bright and darkness?
I think absolutely.
Well, so then all bets are off. We're in a game much different than we've ever even thought about. There was a really good book Joseph Kahn wrote called The Harbinger. I read it, and I thought it was a remarkable book, and it's basically how the United States has fallen from grace. And we're all in agreement that it has. We're credit whores. We've whored out everything, the whole country. We have derivatives on derivatives on derivatives on derivatives on nothing. As Captain Austin Fitz says, there's $20 trillion missing. HUD has been a piggy bank for years. They've been robbing us blind forever. Forever. Just absolutely forever. So, and again, I understand your guys' logic behind cryptocurrencies, but at the end of the day, if I can't put it in my pocket and walk across the imaginary border that each country has created for us as human beings, I don't feel that it's mine.
I can print you out a paper wallet. If you want.
You don't even have to do that, though. You can memorize your code. You don't even have to put it in your pocket. You take it across. No one knows you've even got it.
Yeah, but when I get to where I'm going, I still need a computer. And then I need a local who's going to transact business with me.
You're going to need that with gold, though. You're going to be searched at the border, et cetera, et cetera. But I take your point on that, and here's part of the thing, though. You're quite correct. We are credit whores. We've had all this going on for decades, much longer than it should have. We should have crashed in '72, arguably, but it doesn't matter because universe is a self-correcting system, and things change. And we're right at that point where things are changing. And this is not change that's on a political sign. This is change from a core level up. And that's why there's so much huge level of emotion around it, because it's change affecting everything at the level of money. And correct, you need a computer, but if you don't have a computer in the future, in other words, if you don't need it, you'll be one of the very few people that will be alive, because most of the people will die as a result of the system going down that would take out all of our electricity and our computer and stuff. We have to think that, 2 million people will die within the first day of an EMP, just as the hospital's electrical systems fail. And then over the next week, you'd have millions upon millions die, and it would just get really worse. And there will not be a food shortage. There will be a famine should the just-in-time system collapse. And you will see people in the United States at 350 million people. Should the just-in-time food supply system collapse, we would be lucky to retain a quarter of that population over the next 10 years.
And would that surprise you? I'm comfortable with that's where this is going. I have studied this, and you're talking to a guy who lives in the woods. I have several years' worth of food, energy, Faraday boxes, backup generators in Faraday boxes. I mean, we're talking.
Why have the Faraday boxes? Because even if you have a generator, you're going to need fuel to go all of that time and so on. You can't be no man is an island. You can't sustain yourself independently anymore. And I'm actually saying that. Basically, fundamentally, I've decided to throw in my lot with these kids that are out with an attempt to invent a future that does not take us into Mad Max world. And I'm comfortable with that idea because I'm quite certain I can kill if I have to and be very efficient about it. And so I will be able to survive. But I don't choose that I should go that. I don't choose to go that way,
I've taken it to the complete extreme. And again, I do have fuel to run generators. I could probably go somewhere in the neighborhood of 20 to 30 months running backup generators on the fuel that's put away. Diesel vehicles that predate computers with ample diesel fuel put away. I have food put away. I live in a farming community. In a farming community where if I walked down the road 2 miles to a farmer and said, I will gladly give you X pieces of these silver dollars for one of your cows this year, that we would be able to make a deal. Sure. I guarantee you that I can go to the pig farmer around the corner and say that for several pieces of silver, could we trade a pig? And we've all talked about this, and I don't want to say we're a like-minded community of kooks, but I don't believe that we could rely on the government to protect us. The same government that's brought us war for over 220 years of our 240 years of existence.
That's why we're corroding them from the bottom, though. That's exactly your point. I mean, everything Jim has said is correct. I'm not disagreeing with you. I'm just saying there is another option, and that other option is action, agency, taking things into your own hand, joining a decentralized approach to things where you don't necessarily agree with someone on political business, but that doesn't matter because you do agree on the ideology of where to put your money and your time and your effort and the kind of world you want to build in the future. And it's
right.
Kind of
okay, but follow me, Cliff, because you're a computer genius and I'm not. I look at it as I want to look a man in the eye, shake his hand, give him my 5 pieces of silver, and leave having done business. If we're going to live in this digital computerized world where people don't even talk to each other, they text each other, it's just, I don't see us solving the problem. The problem is we live in a world so corrupt. I mean, Bob Marley or Ziggy had it perfectly correct. We live in a world so corrupt. I don't believe in Mary Poppins.
Tell me that is different than any day in human history. Tell me that corruption is any worse now than it was in the Roman Empire, in the first King Wen Empire in China, in the Mayan communities, in any place on the planet. And I'll say,
you know why it's worse, Cliff? because there's guys like you who are so smart, you could program computers to read my thoughts before I have them. Because they could create AI programs that they're probably running psyops on all 4 or 5 of us on a daily basis, because their AI programs.
And has it benefited them? Basically, BFD. It's like this is the planet. This is the reality we have. My approach is to say I'm going to face it like a Viking, like a warrior. I'm going to be a man of honor and walk the way I wish to in this planet and accept the consequences of that, rather than attempt to hide myself from those consequences. Because sooner or later we're all dead. And if you get your head wrapped around it a particular way, we need not be dead in the future in an immediate sense. In other words, a lot of us old guys that know shit can stay around a lot longer now because of things that have been discovered in the last 5 or 10 years. And we can add to that, and it's combinoric. And so I agree with you 100%. I'm just saying that there is another way there, and we're starting to harness the energy and make real progress with it. And a sign of that progress is that in 2010, 1 Bitcoin was worth 28 cents, and an ounce of gold was worth $1,350. And today, an ounce of gold is worth $1,200, but 1 Bitcoin is over $8,200. I'm going to throw in with the $8,200 crowd.
Well, and again, I hear you 100%, and you've been proven correct up until now. But tulip bulbs were selling at a premium of 10 times a man's wage at the peak of the bubble. In Iceland, you had fishermen who became investment bankers who were advising people on deals that they knew nothing about. Just because they were.
And Isaac Newton, Isaac Newton was still around. He'd have something to tell you on that.
Right. So, and again, in any case, I just see cryptos as a distraction from the real problem. The real problem, we live in a debt-based world that's corrupt. And
cryptos can't be corrupted. But cryptos can't be corrupted. They're not debt-based. They're not a distraction. They're an attack. They're a solution for the debt problem. You don't have to live in the debt world. A lot of the kids I talk to are talking about going off-grid. Hey, they ask me, where can I get some XYZ coins as I go off-grid? And they don't mean they're going to go off and live in the woods. They mean they're going to step outside of the financial system and go off-grid in cryptocurrencies, go decentralized. And it is a community network kind of an effort. And so in this sense, yes, you're quite correct. You can go and give silver to the guy with the cow and get it that way, or you can take your phone over there, shake his hand, and transfer coins through Bluetooth to his phone.
Not any I know, Cliff.
Well, around here, that's the case. You can do that. I can go down to my local pot store here and buy pot and derivatives, concentrates using cryptos. On the West Coast here, it's the left coast leads, oddly enough, in a lot of this stuff. And if the world collapses, then we're in Mad Max world, then, we take out our weapons and it's bullets and bullion, and only the bullion is only good to hide behind while the bullets are flying, because no one's going to be trading with you, really. But in the meantime...
I'm putting my 44 back in the drawer. Okay.
There you go. You don't need it. See? You don't need it. But also, we got cool stuff coming. We're looking at inventions popping out all the time that are changing the world around us, taking us day by day by day by day away from the Mad Max scenario. And in the meantime,
rhodium is the metal that speaks to laser weapons.
Okay. I was thinking more of aluminum in the form of
rhodium's the most reflective metal in the world.
Right, but aluminum's cheap, and you can
more
use
reflective
it as
than you can create in any mirror. So when you see the guys on the movies wearing the white uniforms, in the white covering them all, that's the nasty empire or something. That's
there you go. Star Wars.
Just turn a magnet on.
Well, yeah, then you might get your what squeezed, but at least a laser gets bounced off those uniforms.
Well, guys, we thank you very much for coming on.
This has been
it was fun, guys.
Great.
Okay, I compliment
you
all,
Bill.
Yeah, it's been.
Go ahead, David.
What happened? Did it end?
Did David, you there?
I'm here.
David run away?
Yeah, I thought you were going to.
He ran to get his gun.
No. Wait, I just want to say,
we want to compliment each other.
He's oiling his son.
I've read you guys forever. You know, we're all in the same. We all have the same basic concept. We live in a world so corrupt. All we're trying to do is get people out the other end.
In one piece.
Yeah, right. And you know what? There are no even driveway light guarantees in this game because who knows what's going to happen in 12 seconds.
I'm getting my
like
44 out again.
Nobody gets out of here alive, and I would just like to finish.
You know, nobody does. And you know old age is a terminal disease?
If you do believe you have a maker, you should get it right with your maker.
Oh, hey, listen, my family lasted to 85. Don't look for me when I'm 84. I'll be in every church and temple you can find.
Well, guys, thanks again. Let's wrap this up, and I will get it posted. I don't know whether it'll be posted tonight or first thing tomorrow morning, but it will be posted on a public YouTube.
All right, cool. Thanks, guys. That was great. Appreciate it.
I was honored to be in the pleasure of you three guys. Very, very, very much. And you are Nostradamus, even if you don't believe it.
I couldn't believe it if I tried, Guy.
You look a little bit like him, but I'd like to work on the beard.
Hey, keep your hands off of that. That's the only hair I've got.
Well, molestation. Somebody touched my beard.
Exactly.
Well, have a great weekend.
Okay, I got to go, guys. Talk to you later.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
See you, fellas.